Hi everyone. Well, everyone, one person. So it's probably a bit of a slow turnout, I think, for tonight, Saturday night. Although Gen Con's not on, so we should be able to get some people, unless they're all flagging from that. Were you at Gen Con?
I was not at Gen Con this year, maybe next year, but this one was a little iffy for us.
Yeah, well, God knows when I'll get to an American one. But yeah, for those who are watching now or watching later, this is another top 10, specifically getting back onto these collaborations because time has been somewhat short with all the top 100s going on, but at least they're getting done. And obviously needed to get the invites out, get people. Although I didn't need to invite Mac on, kind of invited himself, but he was going to be one of them anyway. So it's just he got in first, so therefore, like first come first serve. But yep, this is our top 10 game. Even though it doesn't say on the overlay, because I didn't have time to like type one out. This is basically our top 10 games that we think could benefit from a little bit of app persistence. Apps are taking over games in the sense. We've had like Descent and Mansions of Madness and quite a few other, Journeys to Middle Earth and various other games that have used apps. But we like apps. Apps are fine. They don't have to be the entire game. And there are some games that probably could benefit from a little bit of app assistance. Not necessarily the entire game, but just like elements of it, even if it's a simplistic thing like helping with the scoring and that. But that's what we're here to talk about. So in case you didn't tune into the last top 10 that the two of us did, which was top 10 best campaigns and games, which was quite an interesting one. That was done back in March. Go check out that live stream when you're done with this one, if you can. Matt, can you explain yourself again, please?
Sure. I'm Mackenzie Franklin from Sidegame LLC here in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Once again, Luke and I have worked together back on best campaigns and games. But what I do here in Colorado is I run a game night hosting business. We've been moving a lot from the hosting to YouTube as well, where we've kind of picked up a couple of things. The first one we've done is the organizing style of videos. This is if you get like a giant Kickstarter game or something, you're like, oh gosh, how am I supposed to compact this in a way that's not going to cost me $1,000,000? We really help out with that. So we have a lot of that content we cover. And we also cover a lot of top 10 videos. They're just things that I really like doing. So I like to make those. And we also have a new series that we're working on, crowdfunding, where we talk about the new Kickstarter games that we get in, as well as games that are on Kickstarter. So a little bit of a dichotomy for things that are recently delivered, as well as on Kickstarter. We also have some corporate cardboard shows that we're doing with my friend Dan over at Chairman of the Board, and just lots of collaborations. And once again, really happy to work with Luke again. Fantastic content creator. So very excited to work here and be with him today. So exciting. I'm so pumped. Let's do this.
That's fair. Well, say if he's given a good enough description there. I'm glad to see the subscriber counts bumped up quite a bit since the last time we spoke, because you barely started with like 50 subscribers, if that, when we first talked back in March, and now you're already over 1,000. This is good stuff to see.
You were my first collaboration that I'd ever set up, so it was really exciting to be able to work with you again, because now I think that I'm really getting kind of in my swing when it comes to putting things out on YouTube and just in general. So excited that we get to see this change and we can compare that list to this list and see where we're at. Luke, you there? Can you hear me okay?
I wish I... There we go. That's all right. The signal was a little bit iffy there, but we should be all right.
No worries.
But yeah, I wish I could get this much content done. I've got to edit so much on my videos that it takes forever to get a single video out, whereas like yours is more like just get on and talk, get the content out, which is good, because this means you can put out all this stuff, which is like ridiculous. I've joked that Mac is basically the Watch Mojo of board game creators, because I love top 10 lists and top 5 lists, and he's basically putting out a top 10 list every other day. It's kind of getting annoying. It's like you're overtaking me like by crazy on. Because I thought that was meant to be my kind of shtick, doing a lot of the top lists, and it's like, nope, it's not turning out that way at the moment. Whereas with you, it's just like top 5 of this, top 10 of this, top 10 playbats. I mean, you're tackling topics I hadn't even thought of.
So, like I said earlier, I really like doing them. So, and honestly, editing is the thing that I find the most challenging. So I try to just go for the content more so than the editing. I'm more into playing the games and talking about them than I am sitting there and kind of dealing with the editing in the video. So
that definitely works out. I wish I could do it a lot simpler, but and I know a lot of creators do it that simple way, but for some reason I just can't. It doesn't.
You put out some quality content, Luke, so you can definitely tell that there's effort and skill put into your editing.
I'm trying. All right, who's actually managed to turn up? I know it's a short turnout for now. It is Saturday night after all, but hello to Julian. Yes, top 100. It's exhausting, but it's still good. I recorded the 49 to 40, no, the 50 to 41 today, so hopefully edit that soon. But I've also had to record a compilation Blitz review video, so I've got to edit that as well. Hello to David, Mr. Jadober. No, you're not catching the end. We literally only just started. It's at 8 p.m. BST. It's like, which I was hoping that I got it right this time zone wise, because when Mac wasn't here like 5 minutes before we were meant to go live, I was a little bit concerned. It's like, oh, did I get the time zones wrong again? So hopefully not too bad. Hello to Lydian. I came to the computer to check on a card for Grand Austria Hotel and forgot you were on. I can't do a sad face, I'm too happy, but it's like, yeah, aw, well, at least you're here now. That's fair enough. Oh yeah, it's Saturday night here. It's Saturday afternoon for all you lot, so what else are you doing on a Saturday? Come on. British internet, yeah, something weird. I mean, British everything at the moment has just gone mad. And hello to Claire as well. Yes, I know Claire, local girl. So, got not a huge amount of turnout for now, but people will turn up, and failing that, people can watch it after the fact. That's a good thing with live streams. You get some now, you get some later. So, right, on to the top 10 itself. Top 10 games with app assistance. You sound like you didn't have as much trouble as I did.
So when it came to some of these choices, some of the things actually already have app assistance, but it's not official. And you'll see that reflected on a couple of mine. But for a lot of them, I had some cool ideas, and I'm excited to see your creativity on these too.
Yeah, I'm not I haven't checked to see if like, oh yeah, there's app assistant stuff all like for them already. And to be honest, I think the ideas I've got probably haven't been done via an app yet, so it shouldn't be too bad. Although I think my top 5 is probably going to be more meaningful than the bottom 5, particularly the bottom 2, because I thought like, oh well, we'll stretch this out to top 10, and then I realized, oh blimey, actually this was harder than I thought. Because I mean, we're not saying any of these are like logistically sound. In a sense, I might say, well, I think an app should be able to do this and this and this. I have no idea what the reaches of app technology can be. There's a good chance that some of our ideas could be shot down within seconds of like, no, there's no way the app could do this. It's like, oh, okay, fine. But, you know, we can dream. So this is very much a pipe dream. Ways of that. And got a new face. Scott, howdy to both of you. Great video on the organization of deception, creative use of gum packets.
You got it, man. Extra packs. I'm telling you, quality.
Yeah, it's like if Mac's not doing a top 5 list, he's telling us how to store all our stuff. Which is fair enough, because to be fair, it kind of needs it. All right. Max 10. Got all the bits set up. Why not? Oh, one last thing. I was very impressed with how Mansions of Madness managed to put together an atmosphere alongside the board game. Yeah, because we're not putting on... I mean, I have not put on a single game that already has an app as part of the game. Presumably, you haven't either.
Slightly, but you'll see why.
Fair enough. All right. I got to find some chink in your armor somewhere, otherwise it will just be you showing me up. That's the thing. All right, well, let's see how badly my list turned out this time. So, let's go.
All right. All right, let's do this. So my number 10 is going to be kind of that category of game that I was alluding to earlier, where they exist. The apps for these exist. However, you have to pay for them. They're third party, and they're not official, but they are extremely helpful. And we're going to go ahead and lead off with Arkham Horror, the card game. So Arkham Horror, the card game is a campaign-based story game where you have lots of information that you have to track. You have these scenarios that you're setting up. Based on the results of previous scenarios, you'll be taking notes, and then those will lead onto the setups for new ones. You also have this new content in the form of the return to expansions that are going to be including new cards, new setup conditions based on what's happening. But ultimately, you just have this large campaign where you're tracking down stuff on a campaign log and moving it from place to place. You're also going to have this bag of chaos tokens that you're going to be bringing things out of that you're going to need to track and make sure is different. And if you're running multiple campaigns, this may be an issue, having to figure out what's in there. So there's a lot of things that go into making this campaign solid and remembering from mission to mission. And there is actually already an app that exists for this called the Arkham Cards app. So you can find it on iOS, you can find it on Google. It does cost money to buy. It's not provided by Fantasy Flight, and you can tell that there's not a lot of the assets that may go into something like Mansions of Madness. But I think that this app app is so fantastic. It's very integral when it comes to the story. It makes things nice and streamlined so that when you open it up and you're ready to play, you're not having to kind of file through different things saying, oh, did I do this? If I did, read section A, read section B. You can just jump straight into the story. It will tell you what to set up. It allows you to store and log your decks, how much XP you have. It's a really great way to implement all of the different, paper materials into an application. It works extremely well. It's called Arkham Cards. Arkham Cards. It's very straightforward. It works really well. And I was quite surprised how well it works. A friend of mine uses it constantly for his campaigns. We use a big binder and that stores all the paper components. But I really enjoy the way this implements. And as I said, this is already something that exists. It's something you can access. Two others that fell into this category were Kingdom Death Monster with things like Black Ledger. There are ways that you can track the campaigns online, and Gloomhaven with the Gloomhaven Helper app. So all three of these things kind of just wrapped up into one. And I think that these apps exist. I would just like for Fantasy Flight or Cephalo Fair to say, hey, let's go ahead and take these apps, get the license for them, and then put them out for free and include them. And I think because these are essential and a lot of people don't know about them. So if that's kind of my broad number 10, Arkham Horror LCG is specifically, but already created third-party apps for board games.
So yeah, because you've always got quite a bit of setup to do with those cards, and it can be a little bit on like the problematic side there. But yeah, I can say that. I'll have to check out that app though, because that does sound pretty sweet.
If you're in Arkham Horror, it's a great one.
Oh yeah, I love this game. It's definitely something, because I mean, the only app I use with this at the moment is the Chaos Bag one. It's like I can't be bothered. Although the problem is I've got my tokens in those little coin capsules. So I kind of like drawing them out of the bag, rather than just pressing the button on an app. I know it's quicker, but I want the ching 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 of all the coin capsules. That's kind of how I work. But all right, well, after his decent number 10, we get on to my rubbish number 10 in very comparison. This is almost a joke one, because I was struggling to think of 10 that I thought like, all right, this could work. Number 10 for me is basically Camelot. Now, this you're going to wonder, what am I on about here with this? This would be a small app that is needed, but one thing that annoys me so much in Camelot, and I think that's where my list is going, it's more the small things that could be done to just make the game a little bit more elegant and smooth without having to do that. This thing here. I get why they put the pyramid in there. This oversized, overcomplicated dice shaker that basically when you take a turn, you've got to shove one of the colored dice, you've got to put the colored dice in the pyramid, pick up the pyramid, shake it about, and then move a little trapdoor at the bottom, hope the die is in the place so it can come out of the thing. I mean, it's a lot better in the second edition, but still, it's not perfect. The first edition one was absolute trash. And when it pops out, it's a 1, 2, or 3, and it means that camel moves, and you put it aside. It's a complete gimmick. There is no other rhyme or reason to have it there apart from this stupid little gimmick. Can we not just have an app that does that for you? Just literally press a button, that it knows the dice that have come out, you press it, it tells you what's rolled, you move the camel, and you don't have to mess around waiting for somebody to get this pyramid under control, because 9 times out of 10, no, you won't get it under control. It's just like, come on. As I say, this is a bit more jokey than some of the other ones, but mine are very much more like, I don't want the app to take over half the game. And I suppose some of my later ones in my top 10 are going to be a bit more like Max 10, like probably more thought out in the sense, but this one's like, yeah, every time I play Camelot, it's like, stupid pyramid, don't care. Can we find an app for it?
Now, that being said, for your number 10, I think this is pretty great. First edition Camelot, for sure. I know a lot of people seriously just got rid of the first edition because of that pyramid improvement in the second edition. It's a huge deal. And like the rubber bands breaking and whatnot. I think that the new pyramid definitely works, but oh man, that first one was rough.
Yeah, furthermore, I mean, this one isn't perfect either. People still struggle to get it out of the little trapdoor at the bottom, but it's still better. And I get it, yeah, you want to make it look good because it's already over flashy. But you know what? I'd have been happy with just a little app. And I'm surprised no one's like just made a third-party app for this, because I would probably download it and have it on my phone just ready for it, It's like, which camel spat on me? Is like, no, I love the game. It's on my shelf. I mean, I bring it out when I need to like get new players into a racing game. I just hate that pyramid. It's the one thing that kind of irks me. But yeah, everything else in it, fine. Even though we don't desperately need, what was it, 3D pop-up? Yeah, was it the pop-up pyramid, pop-up palm trees and stuff like that. It's like,
Did that surprise you the first time you saw it?
I knew it was coming, but it was just like, okay, a little bit mad. But yeah, it's just, as I say, with me in games, if there's one thing that's like, oh, come on, this could have been simplified. If it's a gimmick, it's got to be a good, well-designed gimmick. And I just didn't think that the pyramid was one of them. Because, I mean, granted, yes, you're in the desert and you're there, but other than the fact that it contains the dice, the pyramid doesn't really have any relevance to what else you're doing. So that was kind of my thought process with that. But as I say, like little snippets like that, don't worry, my list will get better, I hope. That's what I'm moving for. All right, 9s.
All right, so my number 9 is for the game Fog of Love. So if you've played Fog of Love, you know that it's a scenario-based game where you're going to be using these cards that are scene cards that explain something that you might find in a rom-com. The whole premise is you're simulating a rom-com, trying to get this relationship between the two players.
Cool.
It's really
If you played some of the later packs that it came out with, I'm not sure rom-com is the phrase I would use. It gets pretty dark.
That's true. That's true. There's the one that's the paranormal romance where, you have there's like a ghost. I'm not going to do any spoilers, of course, but on the front cover, you'll see there's a ghost. There's also one that has to do with in-laws. And I think that an app in this game would work for 2 reasons. The first reason is you could introduce a scenario that has to do something with long-distance relationships. And I think that'd be really fascinating to have a scenario based around that. Having to use a phone to communicate via text or, integrating in the game some way or FaceTiming. I think that'd be really fascinating. The other thing
you thought about yours a lot better than I have.
Well, my wife and I, we were in a long-term relationship for about a year while I was out in Hawaii. So I've experienced and lived through this, and I think that would be a very interesting scenario to put people in that may not have been in that one. Another thing that I thought would be interesting is at a certain point, you're going to play this game a lot, and you're going to see majority of the story cards, and you're going to say, okay, I know what this one is. I've seen this before. I think this would also be a great way to deliver new content in the form of like a digital story hand or something. So I think that either of these scenarios would work really well, and I'd be excited to see what they could do to evolve this game for kind of like this new digital age of dating. Maybe something to do with like a Tinder or OkCupid application dating. That'd be so interesting, right? To have online dating be a thing in this game. So it's so interesting to me. So I'd be curious to see what they do with it. What do you think?
That's an interesting idea. I mean, I'm surprised they never tried something like that when COVID kind of hit. Trying to do like the long distance thing. And some of this does go rom-com, but I mean, that's high school sweethearts. You get later on where it starts talking about like, the pregnancy and the marriage issues and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, rom-com? I mean, I find it a laugh when I played this game, but I had to sell my copy eventually because I just couldn't convince others to play it. I think I tried it with an ex-girlfriend once, and like I say, she enjoyed the game, but just struggled to understand what was going on. And if you play it with if I play it with other blokes I know, it's a 2-player, which means it doesn't hit the table a lot anyway. But then it's also a little awkward. Although they kind of like get me sort of like trash talking, it's like, seriously, you're just not into this relationship. What is wrong with you? But I could see the app working with that. Would never have crossed my mind, though. Curious what others would think. It actually works quite well. Alrighty, so on to my... no, can I beat my Ted? Yeah, pretty much anything can beat my Ted, to be perfectly honest. But this one is, again, more of a... I'm wondering if there's an app for this already. Not to my knowledge, but hidden movement games usually tend to be all about writing and pads and stuff like that. So... anything to kind of streamline that would be better. This particular one is the one versus many type. So everybody's trying to hunt someone down. The people doing the hunting have got the board and it's relatively clear and that's fine. They're moving around on the board. Whereas the person doing the hidden movement isn't on the board. They've got this massive pad where they got to write down their moves. And if they get it wrong, then... it messes up the game, so the app could solve that problem. But I would just much rather play something like Spectre Ups if I was basically controlling my side of things, like say I'm the hidden person on my tablet. I'm on my tablet, I've got the entire map on the screen. I know where I am because when I input the moves, it's recorded them. So I can go back through the log, it knows that I'm in the correct spot, I haven't made a mistake. And then it can show me all the legal moves I can do based on what movement I've got. It can give me line of sight, so I can see what areas I can see or something without having to stare at the board, because some people go as far as to try and track your eye movements or so, which is like, come on, seriously, which is like trying to play a game here. But I'm curious, as Judy said, did they ever do an app for Fury of Dracula? I mean, you've got the Steam game version of Fury of Dracula, which is okay, but I don't think they did I'm not sure if they did a side app. I'd be curious if anyone else knows. But yeah, I just, if this is, I picked this one, A, because it's my favorite of the lot, and B, because it's already in that time setting which would suit something like this. So, if for something like Fury of Dracula or Letters from Whitechapel, it's the wrong time period. Here it's futuristic-y. So, this is the time when you could say that somebody's got a digital tablet. It's basically Metal Gear Solid. So they get this board, they move around, but I don't have to stare at all the letter references on here or something. I can literally just go, right, I'm going to go from there to there. Keys it in, logs it, I know it's correct. And then, based on looking at the board, I can see, oh, yep. And then it will have your inventory for the grenades and other bits and bobs that you were using. It can track the objectives. So, yeah, I think it'd just be nice and just a bit cooler. Even if it only streamlines it to a bit, although I think it would streamline it a fair bit, certainly make life a bit quicker for the, whatever they're called, the person on their own. I just think it would be fun to have the tablet.
I think this is definitely a great alternative to something like that. I think it solves a lot of the issues you brought up. And I did actually look it up. There is an unofficial app. It kind of falls in that same line with like Kingdom Death and Gloomhaven, where somebody has loved this game, put in the work in order to make something that can be used as a tool. So pretty sweet. It's on BGG if you just look up unofficial app. So I think that's awesome. So people agree with you. They think this game needs one, so they made one.
Fair enough. I mean, well, it doesn't invalidate it. I just didn't know
of course
one
not.
existed. Although Linear mentions like something similar to Star Wars Imperial Assault. So that was the one that allowed you to play Imperial Assault co-op, didn't it?
I think that the Imperial Assault app would be a little bit different. It takes that game and turns it into the co-op, and then it has, the AI being moved. I think this one is, as you described, is more of like, it's more beneficial to the player playing as the one, right? Like this is something that will facilitate your actions and make it a little bit more smooth.
Yeah, it's an aesthetic like aid for the player as opposed to a replacement for. It's more like to get rid of that big pad, because Imperial Assault's app is more comparable to something like the Descent app. Allows you to play fully co-op. It controls what the enemies are doing, or they move based on the thing, and then it handles combat. So it's not quite what the Imperial Assault one is doing, but I can see where that link would possibly come from. Okay, fine. All right, well, good. That was a bit better than the Camelot one then. So moving on to Ace.
All right, so number 8 is for a game that I absolutely love. My favorite one from this year, actually. And this is for Sleeping Gods. Now, right off the bat, I think Sleeping Gods is incredible. I don't think it needs an app, but I think that it could use one, because if you weren't aware, Sleeping Gods has a soundtrack, and the Sleeping Gods soundtrack is so fun and so cool. I love it. I think it's awesome. And
you could sleep to it. It's so like relaxing.
Oh, I love it. So this is a very simple thing that I would do. I would take the Sleeping Gods soundtrack, make it available, put it on an app so people could play it, and maybe based on the location that you're in, you can hit a button and it'll play music. Seventh Continent has something similar to that with the different locations that you're in. In addition, you could also have voiceovers for the narration for these different places you're visiting. It's a very simple change, but I think that it would be really fun. This is by no means necessary, which is why it's so low on this list, but I think that it would elevate this experience, and it would make that soundtrack available to everyone. And I think that's something that needs to be heard, because it really elevates this game experience, in my opinion. So I love this game. Go ahead.
Yeah, I can't remember. I think he plays an instrument in it as well, but it's mostly his wife. I mean, I don't know what these two people are. They were grown in test tubes, I think, or they were genetically engineered, because I just don't think this pair is a normal couple, because they've just got so many talents among them of like art, design, music, and everything. It's like, seriously, how were you made? It's like you were made in a laboratory. You were not born. Which is like positive praise, but it's crazy what they do. But yeah, the soundtrack, which I think I have got probably on an email somewhere. I'm not sure if I downloaded it. I do listen to it every now and again when I play this, and I did almost consider this one on the list. It technically is on the list. I picked a different game for a similar reason to yours, although for an added reason, which for this that you haven't mentioned, is the book. the not necessarily the Atlas book, but the adventures book or whatever, the
Yeah,
what
the
do you call
story.
them, the stories, the storybooks. Because one problem I have with Sleeping Gods, as much as I still enjoy the game, it's on my shelf, is that you kind of have to rinse repeat Act 1 on the starting area ad nauseum every time you play this campaign. You dare leave the starting map early. You're just asking to get butchered by stuff. I mean, the difficulty curve is a bit higher once you leave the starting area. And once you've done the starting area, you kind of know everything that's there. So you could have an app with a lot of interchanging stories that are randomized when you go to places. So you don't always necessarily know that that place is going to be this shrine with a tribe next to it. You might get there and the app randomizes a different one. It's like, oh, that's there now. Okay, cool. We didn't see that one before. And then you just add to it over time.
And I think that there are some games that have looked at the system and have done this. Most recently on Kickstarter, or on GameFound, I should say, Lands of Galzir had something like that where it could be changed and that those starting areas would not be the same. And I think that's a cool approach to it. But that one is entirely app-based and it doesn't have that physical storybook component. So I like the idea of the option here where it would be great to have an app, but not necessarily something you need.
Yeah, I like the funny you should mention funny you should mention about a very Portal Games solution. We'll see on that front, but yeah, I mean, I pretty much have crossed over with this one. I just picked a different game, although I'm in an R and it's like, do I pick that one or do I pick Sleeping Gods? And I kind of picked my favorite of the two, even though it works for both. Not a problem. All right. With that said, number 8's another one where. The first game I ever reviewed. Still love it to this day, but it does have a fair amount of moving parts once you put expansions in, and it has a phase that you have to do at the end of every player turn, which is a fiddly dice aspect. You've got to check a grid reference on the board, and then you've got to say, right, well, hang on, that's done this. What does that now mean? I've got to put the cubes on or something. It's like, an app that tracks that would have been quite handy or something. And I'm talking about Flashpoint Fire Rescue. You have this part, once you've done moving your people on there, you have to roll dice and tell where the fire is going. And with this, it essentially involves you having to stare at this board to find the grid reference, re-roll the dice half a dozen times if it's not a legal throw, which can happen. And then based on whether there's smoke or fire or whatever there, you've then got to decide, right, okay, it's exploding. Now I've got to put the fire in all these directions. Right, does that blow out a door on top of this? Oh, there's a hazard map material. That explodes. Now I got to do this. It's a lot of madness with it. And if you've got the expansion, you've got the, tiny little flare-up tokens or something that you put on. So if you hit one of those, you've then got to roll again. So it's constant rolling of this dice with a grid reference, which just clutters up the board. If the app could do that, where you just basically, kind of a bit like how the Descent and the Imperial Assault app works a bit now. You get to the end of your turn, you've done your thing, you then go fire phase, and then it essentially does the roll for you, tells you how the fire erupts, and because it's tracked which board you're on, and what elements are in various bits, it's already shown you, right, this is what's happened. It could have the sound effects. It could have, the ambient noise of fire erupting and explosions and people screaming or whatever, just to put in a bit there, like the odd meow from a cat or something. Because everybody's trying to rescue the dog or the cat or the goldfish in this. It's, quite mad. It did come out pre-apps, but we're basically saying, could these be improved to apps? We're not saying this should have been done out of the gate. Because, I mean, if you say that Settlers of Catan needs an app, clearly that was done miles before pre-apps. But we're just sort of going, like, if somebody wanted to make an app pipe dream for these games, these are the ones we're picking where we're going, yeah, you know what? This would save me a bit of time and a bit of bother and maybe just remove one of the few, clunky aspects of the game, dealing with the fire itself. Everything that the players do, nice and simple, gets it done, 4 action points. It's just, especially with flare-ups, and when you've got a situation like this, you're doing a bad job for a kickoff, but it does get a little bit crazy after a while.
I think this makes a lot of sense. I think you've stated it very well. A simple touch of the button as opposed to doing everything else. It'll see where you're at, what you've done. I think that's a great idea. This looks like it would work extremely well. And I think that something like the Mansions of Madness app, at the start of the game, you could like select the things that you have, the different expansions, and that way they know what you're playing with. I think that'd be really cool. So great pick.
Exactly. You just key in the firefighters, key in the bits. It could have all the maps. So, all of them are built in, and then and there's only so much that has to go on the board. I mean, a door, fire, smoke, and that, add in the expansions, it's just tokens on the screen. I mean, I'd love to have that on my TV on the side there, like blown up for some people to see what was going on. But again, it could just add that, ambience and fire. There's actually a Steam game of this.
Oh, yeah.
The 3D cartoony one or something, which is actually quite a bit of fun, actually, if you want to play a solo Flashpoint without using all the expansions and stuff. But something like that, just to add a little bit of a fun to the fray while just streamlining it slightly, and that's what an app should do.
And I think ambience is huge for an app. Like little things. Like, have you played Fuse? Fuse's app on the Renegade app is so fun. It like heckles you as you play, and it's got all the sirens and stuff. It's totally unnecessary, but like you said, the ambience is huge.
It's like, shut up! I'm trying to stop this exploding right now. Although, imagine if they did it with some of those old games, like you remember like Atmosphere, and there was one called a Mega Virus or something, which I never played, but stuff like that where the person comes on randomly and scares you, like gives you a heart attack and then talks you. But the Omega Virus in particular is always constantly sort of going, you're never going to get me, filthy humans and stuff like that. So can you imagine if you had the app giving you the soundtrack with the bits, and then occasionally the phone just spouts out some like garbage, like taunting you or something? It's like, how long do you reckon that phone's going to last? Before somebody gets a little bit annoyed, it's like, destroy you, freaking Omega Virus. It's like, get off my phone. It could work. Alrighty, 7s.
All right, so my number 7 was a game that came out earlier this year, and this is Cantaloupe. So Cantaloupe, I think it's part 1, Breaking Prison. So this is a storybook game where you play as a solo game. You'll be this character, and you're trying to set up a heist. And each of these, it's got multiple missions. In this first book, it's going to have you doing some sort of quest. And the big issue, the big issue I had with this game was that the entire game had you doing this mechanic from the Unlock games, where you were matching one thing with another thing and seeing if those things could solve a puzzle in a specific area. For example, you see a bottle and you see some water, you can combine them to fill the water bottle, and you might unlock something or something might happen. Now, to me, this seems like a fine mechanism. It works really well in the Unlock games. You simply type in the numbers and it tells you the answer. However, in Cantaloupe, it eliminates that assistance of the app, and instead it gives you a pamphlet. And this pamphlet has all this red stuff, and you'll take a code card and try to look it up. And instead, exactly like this. And that little pamphlet on the bottom there, you are going to be unfolding multiple times and looking through to find these numbers. And I found this completely tedious, and it really bogged down the experience for me, because you are making these quick decisions like, oh, let's do these. You have to sit there, combine the numbers, open the pamphlet, go through the pamphlet, scan it. Oh, it's wrong. You put it down, dang, and then you do it again, and you're going back and forth, having to do this thing. And I could not keep playing this game because it felt like work to me. I felt like this was it was not fun anymore. I was sitting there trying to go through this, and it was a miserable experience. And
I've never heard of this game.
So this, it came out recently. It was, a lot of people do like this. They like the style. It's kind of like the old Myst games where you're able to click on things and combine tools and interact. And I think the most apt comparison to a current board game is that combination puzzle in the Unlock games. And unfortunately, something that I did not really appreciate. It was one that I was really excited. I had this stretch of time where I was going to be on the couch and watching some puppies for a while. So I was like, cool, I can play this and it'll be great. Didn't get through it. Didn't get through even 20 minutes. Actually, that's not true. I went through maybe 2 hours of this. And afterwards, I was just like, I don't like this at all. So I was able to get rid of it, and I will never go back to this. But maybe if they do make an app, we'll see. But whew.
I was going to say, this looks like it would just break trying to do it. I mean, these spiral-bound books, you got to be a little bit careful of them anyway. But I just go nuts going through all those logistics. It's I don't know, it's a point-and-click adventure with extra steps. I just don't want to... With this modern stuff that there is now, there's got to be easier ways to do this.
Yep, even with things like, what is it? Chronicles of Crime does it really well. You click the thing and it tells you. Like, that's it. That's amazing. I love that. Or Unlock. You type in the 2 numbers and it tells you. So nice. Give me an app for this and maybe I'll give it another try. We'll see.
But 2020, I never heard of this. I mean, it has Lookout Games on it. I'd never seen this. And when did they made no fanfare?
This came out, I think, in Essen last year, and then it was widely available in the United States.
Which there wasn't one.
Yeah,
I mean, there was
true,
no
true.
Essen.
Around Essen time, like Hallertau and Praga, they all got released around the same time. But this one was, I think, widely popular, at least in the United States, in February.
Wonder average rating. I'm curious how many people have rated it. Was it average rating? Number of ratings 574. Right. Okay. So this is definitely a more obscure title. But yeah, I mean, you're with you, but I've never heard of this game. I mean, I didn't even spell it right when you gave
Martin,
it to me.
I would not recommend it. I would stay far away from this game. It is not a joyful experience.
Well, it's ranked 2000. I mean, I don't care about BGG rankings anyway, but it's like this game is ranked better than some games that I think are fantastic, and yet it's had 500 ratings, of which I suspect 10 of them are the designers and the publisher. So it's like, come on. It's like, the system is broken. Full of it. But, well, fair enough. So, number 7, right. You remember your Sleeping Gods one?
Mm-hmm.
This is the one I picked instead. So, it's kind of a pseudo crossover, but I don't know. You went for the more kind of joyful, pretty, aesthetical, something like that. Whereas me, I'm just dark, gritty, miserable, depressing. I just want everything to be bad and go to pot, which is why this War of Mine is such a fun one for me. So, yeah, because it's a very similar thing to what you were talking about with Sleeping Gods. I mean, if you've heard the soundtrack to this from the PC game, it's really good. I mean, you've got very, well, I say depressing, but you've got that sense of dread in some of the music there, but then you've also got just little guitars playing, you can imagine the one person playing the guitar to people sat around a fire in their shelled house. You could get a soundtrack like that on the app and it would just be so good. But then on top of that, you've also got the storybook. So this could bring in a lot more random encounters when you go out on the scavenge mission. You've got to have a kind of, actually no, in the base set you are just surviving, so it could just be any old thing. If you're playing the Days of the Siege campaign, it is a storyline, so you'd have to mix it in somehow. But traditional game of this War of Mine with some of the scenarios, you could just have lots of random encounters, and that's the one sort of thing. When you're doing the storybook stuff, it's like, oh, great, read the book and get some really nice, well-written stuff. When you're doing the scavenge mission, occasionally you come across the same residence card all the time, or the same war, hobo card or something, and it's just now I've got, I kind of already know how this works. It'd be great if it literally just said, right, you found this card, hit the app, and then it gives you a random encounter from a batch of 25 or something. Get the writers go full time on this.
I think this is a good one. It's another good choice. Now, there is an app for this War of Mine already. However, it has nothing that you describe. The app for this game right now, it's simply just a replacement for the storybook. You type in the number, and then it'll open it up for you. But a lot of those entries are actually missing information, so it's not actually a suitable replacement at all. It's supposed to help speed up things, which I think is a good thing. But I think that the books work just fine, and it's missing all those really key aspects that make an app great, which you're describing with those new events and really breaking open something with something new. So a huge miss on this one for this War of Mine's app, in my opinion. Yeah. So I like your suggestions.
It would be nice. I mean, I have heard of that app, but yeah, if it's got all those problems, it kind of digs in. And yeah, I mean, there are some different possibilities. It's not like there's just one, but have an app, you could just continuously add to it. And as Lillian suggests, you could have more scenarios. There's already, you have to get the first expansion to get a lot of the scenarios, but you could just add more in. Even just little tweaks and rules tweaks. But on top of that, just have the ambient, what do you call those, shifting pictures, or sorry, where it's technically a 2D image, but you see stuff moving in the background. Sometimes they do that with birds and stuff. You could have that on screen while playing this very dark, broody soundtrack, and I reckon it would go over well. As I say, pretty much what you said on Sleeping Gods, except we're going from happy and jolly to quite the opposite. Particularly if you play Days of the Siege expansion, and then you really do have to go into it with a stone heart, because there's some nasty stuff that happens in it, and I should know. I had to go through it all, but it's so good. I do love it. All right, moving on to 6s with something hopefully a bit more chirpy.
So my number 6 is a little bit more cheerful. This is from Nikki Valens. This is Legacy of Dragonholt. Now, Legacy of Dragonholt is a wonderful storytelling game where you are going to be creating characters and then taking them into this fantasy world. And it's all text-based. So it's just got a bunch of these storybooks that you're going to be reading. And that's really the biggest thing here is, oh my gosh, if you play this game for more than 45 minutes, your voice is going to be sore. It's a lot of reading. Like, oh man, sometimes these story games, if they've got just like text after text after text, it can get a little exhausting. And that's how I feel when I play Legacy of Dragonholt for a really long time. And this is one that I bring in the car. And this is one that we'll play while we're driving. The person who's in the passenger seat will be basically doing all the reading, right? Yeah, the person in the passenger seat, they read the storybooks, and everybody in the car who's playing makes the decisions. It works really well, actually, and it's a great travel game, in my opinion, especially when you're driving for hours and hours. But that being said, you better have
I think you would crash. I think you'd crash because you've got to listen to so much fluff. It's one thing with this. It was quite amusing watching like the Dice Tower playthrough of this, but man, there's so much reading in this. It's like it's barely even called a game. It is basically a novel series.
Exactly. And I think something like Foreteller, if you've used that app before, I think that would be perfect for this game. So Foreteller is a really cool system that games like Midara and Chronicles of Junagor and Isofarian Guard are about to get. Gloomhaven has it, but what it does is it not only gives you a amazing narration, so everything is read to you, every character has different voices, but it also has the ambient background music. You might hear like swords clashing in the background, people chatting at the bar in the tavern, or the blacksmith working on his anvil. So cool. This game already like exudes atmosphere. So I think that this is a no-brainer. And once again, travel game, play this in the car. It's like listening to an audiobook. It would be fantastic.
Well, the stuff you're describing is kind of what Sirenscape does with a lot of their soundtracks, because if you've listened to any of their board game specific ones or some of their RPG ones, you might have like the tavern scene. It is very much like that. You hear the clutter in the background and people drinking and shouting or something, and some of it can repeat, but you can tailor it to your heart's content. I mean, if I had more time and people were around my house more often to play games as opposed to Claim Club nights, I probably would have the subscription and I'd go mad with it, but God, I wouldn't have the hours to spend tinkering with all of these and just going, oh, this could work and that. Interesting, Julian's one mentioned here is that I'm surprised more of these storyboard games don't have more verbal app support to help people with dyslexia. That's actually a pretty good point.
And just in general, comprehension for reading is very difficult for a lot of people. Sometimes I have to reread something to understand it. And when you are able to read as well as follow along with the text, that's huge for comprehension. And I think that's extremely helpful.
But interesting, yeah, because you've got like one map and then some notepads. I mean, I suppose somebody's got to write down what you're doing, so you'll be driving, but...
And that's another thing this could help with is the note-taking, the character creation. There's a lot of things, little things that I think this game would be really well done. And Nikki Valens has already done some great work with Mansions of Madness's app. So I think that this is a natural evolution for that system. So I'm excited to see if anything will get done with this or if we'll get a sequel.
It would be good if they did do a sequel on that, because I'd be more inclined to do it if it wasn't quite so much reading. I mean, I was only tempted by this solo after watching the playthroughs of it, because it's like, I am not sitting down with four of us just listening to reading. It's like, come on. I was like, I will read this myself if need be, and then do a bit of dice throwing. But there was some funny stuff there. But no, fair enough. This one works quite well, actually. Okie doke. Right, number 6 on mine. Yes, I hinted to this one earlier. In fact, somebody else hinted it because they mentioned like, oh yeah, what you're describing sounds very Portal-esque. Well, yeah, that's because the same can also apply to Robinson Crusoe, because this one has all of those. I mean, not only could there be some app implementation to, and yes, I know First Martians exists, but that did its job, once it sorted out its bugs on the launch. That app actually works pretty fine. But the thing that First Martians does is, you get the scenarios and they'll pop up. You don't know what batch they've come out of or anything like that. So they still have that kind of variety that you don't know what's coming. Here, you've got these 3 decks that get shuffled into this one, so events will come out at different times with good and bad, and then you've got those ones there. If the app could do that, you could have so many different encounters with all of these decks by now. Just constantly writing more and more stuff for this game to add in. I mean, the tools are fine. You've got the map there, so you don't need that on the app. The app could certainly have an FAQ and a couple of rule hooks or something in there just to make life a little bit easier. But yeah, I want these encounters in an app.
I totally agree with you. I think this is a great choice. As you said, they went for that evolution in First Martians. So I'm curious to see if something like this will persist with the new edition of it from GameFound. So I'm curious to see if they'll take it to that next level, if that book of stories will have something you could scan to take you to something like this. We'll see what happens. I'm excited. Was that a stretch goal or anything like that?
I think there was something in there about an app where some of the stretch goal cards, yeah, encounters would be on an app. So I think there is something in the works for this for Robinson Crusoe as part of the new version.
That's awesome.
Correct.
Did you
Because
go in for the deluxe edition?
I went in for the upgrades to it or something. Like I grabbed the box with the upgrades and of course the new scenario book in that, but I didn't obviously get the original content again because I've already got all that
Yeah.
original content down there. So yeah, that's already fine, but I need that big box because I do want to store it in not two separate boxes because I've got that treasure chest thing as well.
Yep.
I want to basically burn all of the, what was it called, the Voyage of the Beagle set or something, with the stuff that's like so incompatible with the rest of the game. I don't think I've even played it. I sort of got it and never got time for it, but I did for the other expansion. But yeah, I just want the big box. I want those minis. I want that tutorial so that I can teach this game a lot easier to people. And yeah, the extra encounters and some app stuff, will be pretty sweet. And of course, this game benefits from having a lot of scenarios that are all very different. So yeah, great when it hits the table, but I'm looking forward to the new set. I think it will be pretty sweet, even if it did cost a bit. But as with everything on Kickstarter and GameFound these days, it is kind of ridiculous. All right, 6 of the done 5s.
All right, so my number 5 is a game that is notorious for being absolutely terrible with learning everything, so much that they had to rope in Paul Grogan for help to rewrite the rulebook for this next upcoming Kickstarter. So this is Batman Gotham City Chronicles. Now this game
that doesn't need an app. That just needs an entire new version.
Exactly. So they did do a huge overhaul with this game with the versus mode. So the versus mode's a great way to play it. 2-player skirmish system where you're actually playing with the boards one-on-one. But there are still some issues when it comes to some major things. And the biggest thing that people have issues with this game when I've taught it is the line of sight. Everything else they can understand, they can get. Everything else works, but the line of sight is huge. Now, Monolith has done something where they've actually posted online a line of sight tool, but it's like really weird. It's like buried in a forum. You have to like look for specific maps and stuff. And so it's not actually very user friendly. If Monolith released an app that not only contained these different maps and made it very easy to access them, so you could really use in that line of sight tool, I think that would be absolutely wonderful. I also think that there could be some good additions here. The big thing and the big draw of the season 3 for this Batman game is that they are including solo modes and cooperative modes for every single mission that has been released so far. So I think that if there's some app integration there, I think that would also be extremely helpful. So you have one hub that you can use for the line of sight as well as to facilitate these new game modes. So I'm excited to see if maybe this is something that's released in the 3rd edition or if they just clean up that line of sight application that they have right now, because right now it is not very helpful. And as you can see, yeah, go for it.
Or just re-release the whole game. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you mentioned 3rd edition. I didn't realize they'd even done a 2nd. It's just I can't forgive them for what they did with this. I mean, I would have loved a Batman game like this. I would have got totally into this. And when I first played it, I sort of liked it, but I didn't like that it had the same problem that Conan did, where everything was so time pressured.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can't just have fun killing people and going around the map and stuff. You had to gun it for the objective from minute 1, and if you messed it up even slightly, you probably couldn't finish the scenario. It was like so time pressured. But I can't forgive him for the shoddy rules in this game.
It was so difficult. I think I spent like maybe a month like trying and learning, and I remember I sat down to play with my friend Jeff, and he and I even after like taking so much time to learn it, we stumbled through this, and it soured him on this experience forever. And it was rough. But now this is one that we have the system, it's down, and I'm excited that more people will get a chance to play a more refined version of it.
You say it's down. I mean, is it actually playable?
Yes. Yeah, it's very much playable. Once again, the biggest thing is that line of sight. There are like some references that you can see by looking at the board. They're like letters, but sometimes it can be difficult to see like the elevations. So it's
You got to see all those. I mean, yeah, get Paul Grogan on your rulebook and you'll be fine. But people warn them about their rulebooks. You know, even Don Vassell, I think, went back and forth with them when they first got a prototype and said, no, these rules are a bit shoddy. You're repeating what you did with Conan. And they still didn't fix it. It's just like, I'm sorry, but who play tests your game?
Maybe it reads better in French. Who knows?
I'd like to know, because I know it's a different language, but seriously, I mean, I can't put it down solely to translation issues. This sounds almost more like hubris. Yeah, we've got our awesome game. People will understand it because we understand it. Yeah, there's a difference between Joe Bloggs understanding it and the people who designed the actual game understanding it. It's like, so I will be glad to see if there's like a 4th edition with app integration, solo mode, and clear rules. But yeah, you ain't getting me back into this until they do it. I've only got so much time on my hands. Right.
Totally makes sense there.
Number 5 for me. This one, it was like the last one I thought of. It was like, oh yeah, how could I forget this one? It uses what is called a brilliant deck system. It's like, wow, okay, you know, full of yourself much, but this one is Awkward Guess. Awkward Guess being the solid, like, proper version of how Cluedo should be played. Yeah, this one, like, find out who the murderer is, what weapon they used, and what their motive were. You've got that giant score, like, pad and screen in front of you in order to jot down all your notes. Also, like, it'd be already partially cool if you didn't have to have the pad. You could just simply put it on an app, but like I say, I can't have an app to replace the entire game. So let's say we've got this, and that's fine. You can jot down your notes, probably easier than on an app. But that brilliant deck system could be put onto an app, I think, because, oh my word, I hate setting this game up. Yeah, I've got to find, all right, I'm going to pick this scenario. Right, go find cards. 17, 15, 24, 36, 48, and I'm losing the will to live. It's ridiculous. And what I reckon you could do with this, actually, as I thought about it more, is, you know, in games like Search for Planet X and a couple of like the party games where you basically, and like, oh, what are they called? Jackbox Party TV or something, where you put in a code and it logs you into the game via whatever phone it is you're using. So imagine if you had something like that for this. So you put in the room code, everybody logs in via their device, it's got the scenario in terms of who it is and whatever, and the cards could be distributed through that. You could still do your note taking on this screen in that, so because that's a lot of information to have on a scrolling format. So fine, have this, but then the cards you could bring up on your screen. People, when they're doing the trading phase, could say, I want to offer this whatever cards. Everybody else then gets to key in what they want to offer and what cards they've selected in that sense, and then you can have your negotiation, you can debate back and forth there, and then when somebody accepts it, you just key in accept, the cards get shifted, they enter your arsenal, and then you make the notes as you were. But it means that you haven't got to mess around with a deck of cards. You know, you could, it will be a brilliant app deck system, in a sense.
Luke,
but,
are you familiar with Teburu from Simon?
Who?
So Teburu is an app system that they
How'd you spell
demoed
that?
at Teburu. So this is an idea, an app system that they actually showed off with Zombicide, like Zombicide Evolution. And this one was really interesting because it is doing exactly what you described. Like what it had was everybody would have their phone out, and whenever you drew items from the item deck, a card would appear in your hand or something like that. And then you could shuffle the cards off to people. You would flick it and it would go onto their hand. And that would be how you traded items. It was so fascinating. And it's describing exactly what you're saying. The game itself.
Oh, the Teburu, yeah, Teburu.
Teburu. It is. I think that you are describing that perfectly, and I think that is a really good idea for that system. Now, with this being said, I think it's kind of like a dual-edged sword, right? If you make it the app, then you're losing that fun card play of like putting it in the offer and whatnot. But you're totally right. The setup for this game is a nightmare. So I think that's a really good suggestion. The setup and the teardown for this, God, like everything else is so quick. But geez,
I could get over that. I could get over that. Oh no, I'm not holding a hand of cards. I'm holding my app, and I'm still looking at the same artwork, the sepia tone. You know, you can have your ambient stuff in there, but then you still got this. So you're still going to keep the screen and your note taking because you're going to want to jot down and think about like that. But it's just simply for the fact of not having to. You know, I mean, having the cards saying, "Oh, yeah, fine, dish those out." That's okay. But if it took out that setup and takedown, to say, right, game setup, beep, login, code, done. That's already shaved 10, 15.
Yep, I totally agree with you. I think that that's a great idea, but it might be a little too heavy-handed app integration for that more people are comfortable with. So we'll see if this
15 minutes with the
something is
setup.
something that
And
they
then you
do.
got to put it away. As I don't know what it is with the internet tonight. It's like the Wi-Fi just seems a little bit off today, but hopefully it will stick around fully. So hopefully that didn't cap out there. But yeah, I'm almost wondering if I should have put this higher. But yeah, this was the last one I kind of thought of as I was scouting my collection thing, and it's like, what else could I put on? It's like, oh yes, yeah, I could see a Jackbox style system working with this. It works for that. They're simplistic games. The information's on your phone, and screens would pop up for individual phones depending on what they need to do. I reckon the technology is there.
And I think Gabby does point out that there is already an app for this. So it could be something that they add in addition to it. The app is nice as it's going to give you the solution. So it eliminates the player elimination, which is really nice. So it's one less thing you got to do. But I do think that there would be room for something else, which is cool.
All right. Yeah. I had heard rumors about an app for this, but I know it doesn't do everything that I'm thinking of. But yeah, I mean, like I say, at least if nothing else, I'm going to learn about some new apps on this top 10. So that should work nicely. All right, 4s.
All right, number 4 is for one of the newest games to the side game library. This is Arena the Contest. Now, Arena the Contest is a skirmish game where you play with teams of 4 and you go head to head and just try to defeat all the enemies that you're fighting against. Now, that being said, there's also a major mode for this game that's a campaign style. And what you're going to be doing is doing a kind of a standard dungeon crawl where you've got objectives and you go from point to point in this large adventure. No spoilers, of course, but when you're doing this adventure, not only do you have these large pages of text that you're going to read, which of course an app can help with when it comes to narration and things like that. But the big thing is the story mode has these really cool little puzzles that you'll be interacting with. Now the puzzles are kind of like classic D&D, right? Where it says, oh, you see like these different shapes. What will you do to get access to the door? And if you are clever, there's a QR code that you scan and it'll bring you to the answer. And if you got it correct, it may give you a bonus for actually entering the next fight, which is a lot of fun. I think that's really neat. It really harkens back to the kind of classic D&D that it's inspired from. Now, that being said, you already have...
Are you actually doing missions in this, or
so you have a choice. You can either do like these one-off scenarios and fight, or you can string it along on a large campaign. And then in the new one, the Tanari's Adventures, they're introducing even more campaigns that you can go through. So you can kind of pick and choose this play style, how you want to fight, either co-op, campaign co-op, or the single skirmish 4v4 battles. So you've got some cool choices here.
2019 from Dragori Games. Again, this is another one I've never heard of. Is this like another Kickstarter? Because as I say, if it only came out via Kickstarter, chances are I've never heard of it.
Yeah, this is a big Kickstarter game. There's actually a Kickstarter running right now for an RPG kind of only version with this universe using the 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons rules, but it also has more content for the base game. So for the actual board game, so you can get the miniatures and extra fighters and stuff. So it's one that we are backing because this game's pretty great. I really like the campaign, but the puzzles, I think you're already using your phone to track the QR codes, right? So why not just give us an app to make the system just so much more simple? I think it would be great once again that ambient music narration. But the big thing is having those puzzles and maybe doing like a Mansions of Madness style where you've got the puzzles, you can actually move them on the app. I think that'd be fun.
So I mean, what kind of puzzles are you doing in this? Because aren't you just fighting each other?
So in the core game, you do fight, but when you're going through the story, you might, for example, find a door. And the door has keys and things that you have to puzzle and think, okay, why is this here? How many of these rocks do I have to use to, satisfy this condition? And it's a puzzle. It's a logic puzzle that you'll look at, and you have to kind of think about the scenario, think about the surroundings, and say, okay, what am I actually going to do? It has nothing to do with the game itself. It's completely supplemental, but it's totally story-based and fun, and the results of the puzzle will influence the actual scenario itself.
I wonder if this is one of those ones where it just came out with far too much content. I don't know. It's also, I mean, every time I see a skirmish arena or a dungeon crawl or something with too much boxes and miniatures like this on Kickstarter, I pretty much scroll straight past it because I just say, oh, great, here we go. More excuses for miniatures, more too much stuff in the box. And I usually find that there's just no differentiation between a lot of them. And I know there's some good ones out there, but it's just, I think I've been like not burnt, but just like got like desensitized to a lot of these. And I mean, there's 300 images for this game, and it's all just painted miniatures or artwork for this game. It's taken me forever just to try and find something to actually do with the wretched game. So that's already
So
a bad
there's
feeling.
You're totally right. There's so much content for this game, but I think this game does it extremely well because when you play a game of this, you're playing with 8 characters at a time, right? So you're getting to use the content. And I think that's awesome. So that means that there's like 6 different characters per color, and there's like 8 colors that you can pick from. And so when you play this game, if you play it like 5 times, you can use every single available character. And I think that's really cool that the system allows you to actually experience the people in this game. And so I totally get you. I stay away from a lot of games based on just the miniature bloat and saying like, oh, there's 20 heroes to pick from, but I only get to use one for the whole campaign. Yeah, that's not going to fly, right? Like I want to use everybody.
337 saying 10. I mean, to be fair, I never trust the ratings, but yeah, it's like lots
It's
of people
pretty
saying
great.
10 out of 10. Interesting, but yeah, I mean, would never have heard of this one. But what you're describing now, yeah, I could see the app working. All right, number 4, one of my favorite games. This one could benefit. I mean, it's already got a Steam app for this game, and now an Android and the thing, so it has already got the full-on computer version of it. You don't need to go quite that far if you want to have the tactile experience in front of you with all the stuff, but this game has a lot of rules, a lot of interlinking rules, a lot of stuff that you get wrong because whatever enemy you're fighting, whatever character you're using and things like that, there's always something that you will get as a rule wrong, and having an app to basically go, right, you've tracked what you've got on the board here, you can easily then get through a game of Spirit Island because it's got a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of cards that have rules that kind of break other rules. The complexity of this game is off the charts. And with adversaries added even more ways for the rules to get like completely screw iffy. And so if something could just say, right, what's on this board? There's some Dahan here. We're playing these spirits. Here's some Dahan. Here's an invaders. Right. Let's go to invader phase. And then it just takes you through the bookkeeping side of it. And there's another one on my list that's got a similar bookkeeping thing for later. But you could still have the pieces around. You could still have that, and the app could just guide you on where the things. But if it could just sort out every single FAQ that you could possibly have for this game based on what you've got there, less rules checking. Or less mistakes, period. Just like, all right, so I want to use this particular card. It's got it on there as a database. You key in the card, it could tell you or highlight which bits I can use that for. I'll decide what I want to do with it, but then I go, oh, that's not legal. All right, that's not legal. Right, I can't choose that one. You don't waste time getting rules wrong. And certainly, I think rules complexity and like fiddly rule sets are something that an app could really just help with, because at the end of the day, it's a database for information.
Interesting. Okay. So when you play this game, do you play generally just a one-handed solo, or do you play two-handed solo? Do you play cooperative? How do you approach this game?
Mine, 80% of the time I play this true solo.
True solo. Okay.
Occasionally I'll feel like breaking out 2 spirits, but mainly I might do that on the actual proper apps. But then the other 20% of the time I do have some local friends who play this, and so they know it a lot better than I do, so I can play it with them fully co-op. It's one of those occasions where it's like the game goes on very long when it's full co-op, and I actually don't mind. It's just that good.
I totally agree with you. I think this game is absolutely wonderful. And as you described, I think something to just help out with those FAQs, because there's a lot of cards in this game, especially if you're playing all the expansions, and a lot of edge cases can definitely show up. They have those tokens to track things, so I think that could be helpful. But, oh, man. And yes, Julian down there, spot on.
Yeah, the asymmetrical spirits, a lot of interactions, particularly if you use the really complex spirits and that. There will be plenty of times where you've only got to go to, was it the playthrough I did with Paul Grogan about last month or so, where we played through the normal Steam app. We just used basic rules. He was brand new to the game practically, and constantly we're sort of going, all right, I want to try this and want to try this, and the chat is telling us, no, that rule doesn't work with this and that. It's like, if only the thing would tell us that, it'd be so much better. So yeah, just to basically turn the app into one giant FAQ solution, I suspect.
I like the idea that you said, like highlighting potential areas. It reminds me of something like the Hearthstone card game, where you click on a card and if it's yellow, that means it can be triggered, or it'll show you the targets. I like that stuff. I think that's really good, and apps are great for doing that. It's awesome.
Yeah, get them to solve us. We are fickle humans, so let the app deal with that sort of thing. All right, freeze.
All right, so my number 3 is super greedy. Okay, so number 3 is for Exit the Game. So Exit the Game is a
Right.
escape room style game where it really hinges on that. Hey, all you need is this box to play, a piece of paper, some things to cut, and boom, you're ready to go. So that's the selling point of it. It's this amazing experience in this box. It's all you need, and you're going to be able to manipulate and cut up these components. Now, Exit's direct competitor is Unlock, which is very similar. However, you don't have to destroy the components, and it's app run. So the big thing is you're typing in all the information of the app, and that's kind of supplying the different puzzles and the checks and stuff. This one, though, in particular, though, if Exit took the ideas from the Unlock games and combine the two, could you imagine the cool puzzles that you could do with constructible and deconstructible components combined with app integration? So I'm being extremely greedy here. Exit already is my favorite escape room system with the really fun ways that you can use the puzzles, but think about getting the best of both systems. You could have this amazing stuff here that you could really bring together. I think that this would just be fantastic. The amount of new puzzles, the new content you could do with that two combinations. Fantastic. Oh man, I'm just excited to think about this and what they could do.
Wouldn't this not just essentially like turn it from, like, you would remove the need to have the box and components in general if you were basically doing half of it on the app?
I think that if you use a combination of the two, you would not only be able to get the fun, cool app stuff, but you would also be able to interact with it in unique ways with the components. So, just an example here: you might cut the box and put it on the phone and do something, or there might be a wheel to be moving around. Or could you imagine? That'd be so neat. Maybe you use the flashlight on a phone to reflect something, or there's so many possibilities, and I'm sure that the brands could think of something amazing to do with this system.
I think with different phones, though, you said
That's
like
true.
one solution wouldn't fit all phones or tablets or whatever else like you've probably used in order to do it. And not to mention, I can see that being quite complicated. I mean, the Exit games for me work with the tactile system in the sense. I mean, you get the pieces, the box is half the time half the solution, but then you've got all the other bits that you cut up, and it's a tenner to buy it, 12 quid or something, and then it's like, fair enough. Whoop.
So I think that this, though, like, it's not up to me to design the puzzles, right? It's up to them. So as long as they have the opportunities and the resources, I think that they could use this system and do some really cool stuff with it. So I'm just excited for the opportunities and possibilities that could occur from integrating an app. Now, there is an app for Exit already, and all it is a timer and ambient music. And so it's not really something you need. Honestly, not worth the storage space on the phone. But I think that if you added some cool puzzles and whatnot too, I think it'd be one to be worth checking out.
Yeah, I did. I don't think I really thought of because I didn't think Exit would have benefited as much. Unlock already technically had the app part of it, and I can't remember. Did the Escape Tales? No, they just had cards and bits like that, but that had a really good story front in it. I mean, having an app a bit like Unlock could make some of the puzzles a little bit more interesting than just simply typing in a code. There could be some elements that maybe use partially the physical components and partially the app as well. But then I sort of feel like, well, isn't that what Unlock does? So it's kind of like hard to showcase how it would be. But I mean, yeah, there's probably some room for escape room style games to use the app technology in bigger ways, because obviously we can't always get to an escape room, period. Okay.
And once again, it's just the best of both worlds. I mean, I'm being greedy here. I love what Exit does already, but that would be so awesome.
Fair enough. All right, this one went to quite high on my list because as much as there is a small box version of this game, which I have reviewed, I gave it top marks. I give this one pretty much top marks. I love this game. The small one technically solves this issue, but that's if you get that specific box set. And I still like the first game because there's more in it, there's more variety, and it's not tied to just a circus theme. Because this one is the original Mysterium. Because I still like the Mysterium box. Mysterium Park is great. It is the great way to get it done in like 30, 45 minutes, you know, nice and quick with a speedy setup. But I still like finding the person, the location, and the weapon or motive with the expansion in this, with all the extra bits, with the clairvoyance tokens and that. But man, that screen, the setup for this game, having to so, right, I need so many of these cards. Okay, great. Now, what cards do I need? Could someone please read out the letters and notation on the card so I can figure out what I need? Right, okay, 6, 12, 38, D38, promo 14 or whatever. It's like, the setup for this is a bit of a chore, and that's a fairly fiddly component to have that clairvoyance track with these tiny little tokens or something. It's like, come on, an app could track the clairvoyancy thing a lot better, but mainly the app could just help me with the setup. It's like, literally, it's like, app, right, I have this many players, pick me these cards. Boom, one button, the entire set of cards, including what is for each individual player, is done on the app. That player and other players could literally just look at the screen and said, right, these are the ones that we need to get out. Okay, quick, 3 people could do that at once without having to read out notation. You just look at the picture, and that's a much easier way to see it visually. And then on top of that, once the app is then given back to the ghost player, the ghost can see for every player what their individual ones is without the need of a DM screen at all. You've completely removed that entire component as a result, as long as they just keep the tablet close to the chest. And that would work. And I know Mysterium Park technically gives you a speedier setup and that, but that's tied to a circus theme, so it's a little bit more niche. I mean, you know, Emily puts the point. I actually think, I agree. I think Mysterium Park's actually harder than Mysterium because of the fact that it's all condensed within the circus. So a lot of the pictures are similar in the sense that they've got some similar objects in there, like the locations have got a lot of nighttime light bulb stuff because it's a nighttime circus. So it's like, right, well, I can't put anything light and flashy because that's on every single picture. It's like, and I want there to be Mysterium Camp, Mysterium School, Mysterium, all these other little ones, because I guarantee if they do, I will buy every single one of them because I love this game so much. But
I think I totally agree with you. I mean, I think Mysterium, the original, is actually my favorite of the two. But man, that setup is so big in Mysterium Park. The big thing, the reason I really like the original Mysterium is because everybody's playing all the time. And I think that's huge. In Mysterium Park, you have to wait till everybody finishes in order to actually jump into the fun. And I think that's huge because a lot of people are just going to be sitting there waiting. And I don't really like that in these large style games when you're trying to engage everybody. Yes, you can help the other people guess, but I think that when you have your own card that you're looking for, you may have finished your character and you get to move on to the location. I think that's really cool because it also gives some complexity to the ghost player because they can prioritize the people that are in the lower levels as opposed to you with the clues. So I think that's really neat.
It's fully co-op, so you know, I've never had a situation where even if I finished all my cards, it's like, well, I'm still going to help out those because I'm still going to lend my opinion. Of course, different opinions means that you go on different tangents, but you're still sort of contributing. There's no reason you should be sat back doing nothing because it is like everybody's looking at the image and coming up with ideas. To answer Lillian's question, I would say only one person would need an app. You could have one big setup. So imagine I've got my tablet. It's over there. I can't reach it, but you know, I've got the tablet in front of me. I press a button, it gives me a randomized setup with the expansions that you've included. Boom. Show the setup to everybody, and they just look for the cards by visual representation to get the game out. You then take the tablet back, and you have all the individual stuff which the other players won't see, but you still have the deck of Dixit cards that you dish out manually. So you don't need everybody to have their own app to have a Dixit picture show up on their screen. That's overcomplicating it. This is more to just trim out not only a giant component, which I'm sure costs money, you know, but also to just make the setup that much quicker.
Totally agree. I think a quick setup for this game is what it needs, and that's really why Mysterium Park exists, right? It's because they wanted to take this experience and make it shorter. So totally agree with you. I think this is a great choice.
Yeah, I will. Where is Mr. I think it's downstairs now. But yeah, I mean, I will still play this one because I like the extra stuff in it and the wider variety of the pictures and that you got to look for. But if I just want to get Mysterium Park done and it is only 45 minutes to go to the end of the night, it's like, Park it is. You know, it does its job. But, you know, until they bring out more of those sets, it's good to have the original Mysterium. It hasn't replaced it. It's just an alternate scenario for me. All right, twos.
All right, my number 2 is probably the one I'm most excited about because it's when I thought of it, I was like, oh my gosh, why isn't this a thing? It's not my number 1 because I don't think it's probably the most necessary or probably the most feasible, but I just think this sounds so cool. Now, this
The
is for the
ultimate pipe
game.
dream.
Oh my gosh, you have no idea. This is for Captain Sonar. So could you imagine? Let me just give you the scenario here. You have now turned Captain Sonar from an 8-player game to a 4-player cooperative game. You are playing against the app. The app is going to be shouting at you its commands. It's going to be telling you where it goes. It's going to say, "Hey, I'm going north, north." I forget, the radio operator is still listening on to what the player is doing. You're still trying to track it. You're able to stop and hit this pause button when you're ready to fire a torpedo. You type in the location to the app to say where it's going. You are playing Captain Sonar, but you only need 4 people. It's now officially cooperative. There's no issues when it comes to, oh, am I doing the real time correctly? Oh my gosh, could you imagine this? You cut the need for 8 people. You're still able to play the game in its full capacity, but you're able to just have this incredible experience. Oh my gosh, I'm so like, I want to play this so bad because it just sounds so good. Could you imagine? Could you imagine?
Well, the chat's definitely agreeing you on this one. I gotta admit, the more I think, because I did consider Captain Sonar, and I thought, well, how would it work if you're gonna have 4v4 or so? But I didn't consider full co-op.
So there's a game that already exists like this. I think it's just called Sonar, maybe, or I forget what it is. But there is one that exists that can decrease.
Yeah.
There it is. Coralu just mentioned it in the chat here. But oh man, could you imagine this co-op mode? I think it would be extremely solid, and I do enjoy the chaos of the 8-player. It's amazing. The 8-player experience of this game, so good. But having the option to play it at a lower player count is amazing. I think that would be incredible. Oh God, well, I'm so excited.
Sonar is basically just 2 to 4 player version of this sort of thing. It's more condensed down, so I don't think it has the fully co-op thing either. So having a fully co-op version is a necessary thing. Although somebody has done something similar to this, but it was overcomplicated and had too many bits, and it was what was it called? It was called U-Boot.
Yes, that's the one that I was thinking of. U-Boot in particular. Yes.
Yeah, this one, U-Boot the game, which is a great concept. But man, is it a smorgasbord of rules and bits and complicated stuff. I mean, you got to set up this ridiculously huge submarine, and everybody's got their role, which has about 5 different bits on it or something. And then the app controls where the enemy is, and you've got to sail from point A to point B, actually mapping it out. This is kind of what you're saying, and I could certainly see this working if they could just make this a bit more like Captain Sonar level of complexity, without going crazy levels of like insanity with this. Because when I tried this, I thought this is something I should love, but man, I cannot put myself through the curve to get through this all the time. I mean, I hate Root, but not hate the game, but I mean, I hate the idea that in Root you've got to teach 4 separate games to get it played. That's the bit I hate of Root. I like the rest of it, but in this, it's that taken up to the nth level of complexity, trying to teach 4 separate games, and then the game's not short anyway. So I'd be up for a Captain Sonar version of this. It would certainly not just be like, oh, this is just an app assistance. No, this is like a revisited version of Captain Sonar. This is like the next sequel to the game.
And it just makes sense, right? Like, it seems like it could be doable. The app would tell you its directions. It just seems like that game is so ready and able to actually use it. And I think that it would get it played, it would get it more into the limelight, and it'd be something that you'd be willing and up to do. I'm excited. Yeah, for real, Coralu.
I'd probably enjoy it more if it was a co-op. I tend to turn this one down when it turns up at that, because the problem is my enjoyment of this is so dependent on which role I'm playing. It's like, this guy doesn't really get a lot to do. This person is just literally the most there is no love for the engineer, because all they're basically doing is just tracking that and telling you that things don't work always. So I just found that one boring. The captain I don't like playing because I'm not confident enough in this game to actually play the captain, like issuing orders and that. So that's not even one I play. So really the only time I get enjoyment is when I'm playing this one. I always want to volunteer to be the cartographer person, because that is so fulfilling when you get it right, where you can go, right, stop a second here, and then it hits. It's like, yeah, that was me. As a screw you, engineer, you didn't do anything. You're just telling me things don't work. I don't have enough power, Captain. The dilithium crystals are out of sync or whatever. It's like, nope, this is the role. But yeah, it's like, oh, this will be a high rating for me with this role, and then it just drops dramatically with the others. I do that. I mean, that is to say, there is no love for the engineer. There just really isn't.
But I'm glad that everybody else agrees. Emily, thanks for the support. And oh man, I'm so excited. I think that this one is I would love this.
Now, I didn't think of a full co-op. I dismissed this when I thought of trying to do Team v Team with an app. It's like, that works. This would have definitely been high on the list if I'd thought of that. Is my 2 just going to be sucky in comparison? Well, I don't know. I mean, this is probably the most revolutionary change for a game. Your Captain Sonar one out of the entire list. I was like, there's no way my 2 and 1 compared to like such a dramatic sequel change. But this one, and my 2 are more just a case of, look, just take something simple implementation, not like a revolution of the whole game, and then stick it in. Because I think yours isn't just something we can bolt onto Sonar. You've got to design the whole that 2022 new release, Captain Sonar co-op edition or something.
I think it could be an app though. Like, I don't think it'd be a really hard implementation. I think you would literally play the same thing. The app would yell like it was another opponent. The app would tell you to stop and try to shoot you back. It would have a certain amount of time. I think that this is something that is programmable, doable without even releasing any additional content.
The only thing I would wonder with it is the timing, because you mentioned like it would just randomly say stop and all that lot. You know, the chaos of having players do it is what makes Captain Sonar. If it's a bit more of a predictable algorithm for an app, I mean, if you put it on like a higher difficulty, you could just imagine, look, there is no way that you can think faster than this AI is thinking. It's like, it is way more coordinated than the rest. And even then, how would you program in the AI finding your ship?
I think that you would probably, in this case, you might set up a timer and then it makes a guess or something. And even the app might listen, and it might listen to what you say, because you as the captain also would have to say the commands to replicate that same. You would say north, north, and it would take that and it would think about what's happening. So I think it would be doable. And I think maybe you could even change the difficulty levels to make it, I don't know exactly how it would work, because once again, I'm not an app designer, but I think this is something that would be doable. And I think that'd be cool.
I feel like this is getting very close to designing Skynet. Like this is like WaterNet or something. I don't know, OceanNet. It's going ShipNet. It's going to be some. We're going to get to a point where the technology of the AI in this app is enough to control all our sea defenses, and we nuke the world. It's like it's going to get to that point if we make it too good at deciphering what we do. All right. Well, my number 2, not quite as revolutionary, but love this game. Quite light. Ticket to Ride level rules. So explaining this is not a problem. Playing the game is relatively smooth. There is one element of this that some new gamers struggle with. I don't tend to have much of a problem, but you could cut a considerable length of this game out if, in On the Underground, the new version, you had an app that dealt with the passenger movement. The passenger movement in this game is the one thing that some new players struggle with, because I don't know if you've played it in that, but the idea being that you are building route networks across like London Metro, Berlin Metro, and there'll be expansion maps for this. And there's landmarks as per these, and you've got this passenger who normally is regarded as the laziest passenger ever. But given that the new version has meeples in wheelchairs, pregnant, and old guy with cane, I think the term lazy doesn't really work anymore. It's like there's a legit reason. But what happens is that every round, the passenger moves on the easiest way possible to get from A to B. So the least amount of walking, even if it's next door to them, like there's the guy and then that's where they want to go. If they've got to walk to there, they will opt for going on a network that takes them all the way around here, all the way back up here, another way here, and then leads to there. Even though it would take them like 4 hours to make that trip, they don't want to walk. What happens with this is that some people get a little bit tripped up, though, at trying to figure out exactly what that route is. Because I'm used to it because I've played it a lot. But some people will sort of go, right, well, hang on a minute. So what is the shortest route from A to B? So that way you can go there, and it uses 2 networks. That way uses 3 networks. That's no good. That way uses 2 networks, but it's only got to walk 2 spaces. And you can figure it out. But imagine if the app did that for you. You've got the app. It's tracked where the networks are. It's got the map on there. You can have the tactile version so that everybody can see. But then all you've got to do is go move passenger, and it's automatically told you, highlighted on the screen, what the route is. Or it could give you both routes, and as the tiebreaker or like the active player chooses, you just key it in. Oh man, would that take... I mean, the game's not that long anyway, but that would streamline it so much.
That sounds nice. I mean,
You sound
I have a
unsure.
feeling that you might have. Sorry, I think that'd be neat because it would be something where you hold the phone up and scan it, right, and then it would see what's happening.
Well, I wasn't even thinking of scan technology, but it could work. I mean, I was just thinking that you would just like press where your networks have gone
Hmm.
and it does it. But if it could scan it, then whatever, wave of the future. But just taking out that uncertainty of like,
Hmm.
did I mean, I don't get it wrong. It's not like, oh, I go, oh yeah, that was blatantly not the shortest route. But if it's taking you an extra 15, 20 seconds to figure out those routes constantly every turn, sometimes longer, depending if there's like later in, it's a lot of over and over. It's a lot of repetition, not complex, but still new players, because I'm teaching this to relatively new players because it's got ticket to ride level rules. Other than that, does trip a few people up, and it just would take a good, as Lydian says, probably would take out at least a minute and a half every few rounds or something.
Now I'm curious, when you play this, seeing as you're going to have to calculate the route, does everybody kind of help out and say, "Hey, let's figure out what the route is. That way we can, that's the best route. Everybody knows it. We can see it." Do people do that at the table to kind of speed up the process, or are you kind of just sitting there like, "Man, I hope they don't figure out the best route"? How do you approach this game?
I think you've missed the rules slightly. The idea is that the passenger will always take that easiest route regardless of what the thing is.
Oh,
It's more,
okay. Sorry about that.
it's the gray and the yellow markers in those cards dictate where they could go. They will always go to a yellow one first and then to a gray one afterwards.
Mhm.
All right. So the idea is that here there's 3 yellows, so it could go to any one of those 3, but it will go to the easiest one. And it's based on players will take it in. The player takes a turn, 4 action points to put down routes. And then once their turn finishes, passenger moves.
Okay,
And the next
okay.
player, then passenger moves. And then next player, then passenger moves. But the passenger is doing its own thing. It's got its own rule set for how
Gotcha.
it moves. The players don't change the rule for it. But by putting the networks down in certain places, they're trying to goad the passenger onto their
Mhm.
tracks. So the app could just simply take care of the fact that, all right, the players have done this. They blatantly want to go to Piccadilly. Boop, there's your route. Uses that player's network, and you could just keep it tracked. I mean, if they could scan it, great. But I'd be happy just to key it in on the app and have it shave off that time. A lot of my picks are very much more about what's the one fiddly thing in this game that I find really great, because I love this game. But it's that, what's the one fiddly thing I could streamline out of this? It's like, cool, could we just bolt on an app? That'd be nice.
Excellent.
But you've obviously not played it, so I guess like
I have
you
not
haven't had
played
to go
this
through
one.
that bit one. It's like now this actually, was this a Kickstarter? I think it might have been, but maybe wouldn't have made millions of dollars like Arena Combat or some other miniatures gigs. There's no miniatures in this. I'm sorry.
It looks great though, and I've heard so many good
Mm.
things about this one. It's one I really want to give a try.
Yeah, I never played it in its first edition back in like the early 2000s. I think it
Mhm.
came out, or like late, maybe early 2010 or something. But yeah, when this got re-implemented with this new look, I wanted to try it because it sounded good. And yep, providing you don't play with 4 more players, it's solid. um, some people, yes, most people probably haven't played it, but yeah, it does sound like.
Oh no, we lost Luke again.
Okay, right. God, I
You're
don't know
back. You're good.
there is something wrong with the Wi-Fi today, there, because it's not bad weather and it's just normal night. I don't know. Maybe we've had like what, shortage of food, we got shortage of fuel, now we got what, shortage of electricity now or something. I don't know. Our country's gone to pot. But yep, fair enough. Let's move on to ones then before it gives out. No, spoiler! I spoiled it. Right, I'm going first. Oh man, what a classic mistake. Right, I'm going first. I'm going
Lead the
first
way,
because of
Luke.
that mess up. Yeah, so change of order because of that mess up. Yes. Whoops. So that's going to be one for a blooper one. But the Sentinels of the Multiverse, similar concept to the Spirit Island one. And this one has a full implemented app. A fully proper Steam app, Android app, and that. It is one of the best implementations of a game app I have seen. But of course, I like the cards, and there's more variety in the non-app version. And of course, you've got the players sitting around you. It's not just played as a solo game. So with this one, it goes back a bit to that complexity level of what Spirit Island had. And as much as I love this game, I've played it to death, so I know how the bookkeeping stuff in this works. But the problem you have is, one, hit point tracking, which granted, there are some third-party apps that have, these are like makeshift stuff. I'm trying to find an actual normal game of it, but, people have made third-party apps for this. Great, fine. But otherwise, you've got to use these tokens. A bit on the fiddly side, and a lot of effects want you to have the highest or lowest hit points for something. So again, tracking out an app's a lot better. But the other thing is that there's a lot of effects in this game that trigger at the start of a round or end of a round, and you could have multiple of them out, as well as having these modifiers on various things. And as I say, the problem with games like this is that they've got so many images, you can't find decent pictures of them. But, oh well, let's just pick up Baron Blade here for now. But yeah, you've got your setup, and then you'll pick out a card. He'll have his, bring out his impulsion beam, and then it's got, at the start of a turn, deal damage. So when you've got a lot of these out, it does overwhelm a few people. Now, I've got a system which kind of works. You lay them out from left to right and always go from left to right with every effect. But still, it's quite a lot to keep track of. The app could just have a database of all the cards. It's told, right, we are fighting with these heroes. So it knows what cards we've all got because the deck's pre-built. It's not deck building. And there's no communal cards you add to it. It's like, this is my deck. I'm playing Legacy. This is who I am. The villain, same thing. And the environment, same thing. So it already knows what's in there. You simply just tap on what card has come out. It's tracked everything that's out. And then when you go on to finish phase, or you could do start of hero phase, end of hero phase, start of villain, whatever. It could just step by step go through every single effect that's in play. You haven't got to you might have forgotten. Oh yeah, that's around. The app's done that for you. Not a problem. And granted, you could argue, well, all right, the Steam app's kind of done this, but again, the cards, the variety, the co-op nature of the game, you won't get that on the app because I don't think the app has multiplayer capability. You're playing a solo game against AI. But I love playing this game with other people as well as solo because I want to have the cooperation of everybody else going, right, I'm in a bit of trouble here, guys. What can you do? I need some help over here. It elevates things up a lot. But yeah, has a bit of bookkeeping, and it's what puts a few people off. The new definitive edition is going to make the life a little bit easier. It's rejuvenated the artwork. It's made life a bit easier with the abilities and that. So I look forward to seeing how this works because I have played it on Tabletop Simulator and it is an improvement. I'll be curious to see how it brings in new players once it comes out. But oh man, do I love this game! It's been like my number 1, 2, or one or two on my top 100 for so many years. Will it be this year? You'll have to see. But man,
a little bit of spoilers for your top 100 there.
Oh nah, but people who have watched my top 100 know that it's been number 1 or 2 a lot. But you'll have to wait and see whether it's the same this year or not. But oh man, I do love this.
Exciting. So I have not played Sentinels yet. I've played a lot of Street Masters, and that's kind of like the next step, the evolution of this system. But man, I think that this theme is so good.
People have been telling me to play Street Masters, but you can only get it from America. And one person one person was going to be sending me a copy of it, and it never went through. And it's expensive to just buy it off their website and get it shipped over to the UK. But if I can get a copy of it, I will. It's not the first theme I would go for. I mean, I am a superhero fanboy when it comes to the Marvel and DC movies and stuff. So, and superhero-based games. So this basically was like, right, Luke, we've just given you your favorite theme. It's not a deck builder as much as you like deck builders. And, because I love this, its own world. But it feels like a proper superhero game with the teamwork. And I just go mad for this. But yeah, taking out some of the bookkeeping would be nice, particularly if you play the Oblivion scenario.
It's like the Thanos campaign, right? Something like that.
You could call it Thanos.
Dark Side.
It's kind of he's closer to Dark Side, Galactus. In fact, with some of the stuff that goes on this, you could almost maybe compare it a bit to Kang. And
okay.
I'm looking forward to seeing what Kang does. And I know very little about the character, but the stuff that the MCU is going to do with it, oh man, I can't wait.
I'm so thrilled.
But when you play this scenario, it is madness. There's so much that happens in it. I mean, you have all these effects going off. You have his effects going off. You've got other lose conditions. You control a ton of heroes, but then you get these objective event cards that you do, and they might give you a negative or some tweak to begin with, you fulfill it, it flips over and it could be some artifact like a legendary sword from some other reality, or it could be another mini character that comes in, like a mini version of Hawkeye steps in and it's helping you do stuff. It's the most thematic, epic game I've ever played with superheroes. I've enjoyed it so much, but you need to save yourself some hours. You need your brain switched on and you need a full table and you need to play this solo. It's like, some people have said, they're missing the last expansion. Trust me, unless you are a solo fanatic of this game, do not bother with the last expansion because it will overwhelm far too many people. It's definitely a fanboy expansion.
Oh my gosh. Now, are they going to reprint this in the second edition?
I'd be surprised if they did. I mean, it's just too much to it. But maybe they will further down the line. At the moment, they've just got the definitive set, which basically has a bit more than what the original starter set does. And there's loads of expansions that came out before they have to get to this. So
Gotcha.
I'm not too fast. And even though I want to try out the definitive expansion, it's not like I'm getting rid of the giant black collector's box set that is sitting on my shelf in the other room, which also has the Cauldron fan expansion in, which is a bunch of heroes, villains, and that fans made to keep the universe going. I mean, there is so much content for this game. It is unreal, and I love it.
This is a great pick. Oh, I got to try this one. So awesome.
Anyway, I fanboyed over this, forgetting that you haven't done your one yet. So come on.
All right. So my number one is probably the app that I would use the most if it existed. This is for a very quick filler game where the scoring of the game takes longer than the game itself. This is for the game Fantasy Realms. So Fantasy Realms is a really simple game where on your turn, all you're doing is adding a card to your hand and then discarding one. So it's a hand management game at its core. And all you're doing at the end is you evaluate each card and score it. However, the scoring pad for this game is gigantic. It has sections for each of the cards. You have 7 cards in your hand. If you play the expansion, you have 8 cards in your hand. And each card scores differently based on all your different cards. It's pretty wild, but this game is so smooth. It's so simple. It's so fun. And there's lots of neat, neat different combinations that you can make with the cards. There's lots of ways to shoot the moon. There's lots of ways to do it. But oh my gosh, if they created an app, now hear me out. This is going to use that scanning thing that I was talking about earlier. Now, there's a lot of apps where you can simply take a picture of something and it'll do an instant translation. At the start of the stream, somebody wanted an app for translation. And in my main job, I'm an English as a second language teacher. So what I do with that is there are these cool apps where you can simply hold the camera. It'll instantly translate something to a different language, which is pretty amazing. Now, if you could do that with this game, you take a picture of your hand of cards just like this, and all of a sudden you have your score. It tells you the write-up of different cards. It tells you different things here. And that's it. It takes literally a second to just frame your picture, fold your hand out, and all of a sudden you have your score. There may be options where you have to say, okay, this card can be any card. What card do you want it to be? You might have to select that. There might be a card that says, okay, you have to blank one of your other cards, do that. But once again, that's just a tap of the button. Yeah, oh my gosh, could you imagine?
I think as much as I put apps in that help with setup, I think when I thought of ones that would help with scoring, I didn't include those. Not because they're not valid. I just thought, like, if I did that, I could think about 20 games of this list that would be improved with the scoring. I mean, I've just been playing a game, The Dreadful Circus, the new one from Portal, and I like the game. It's fine. Takes longer than it says on the box by far, but it's a nice game. But the scoring is a pain. It's, it wants you to count up multiple things as well as work out both the, different sets for a token as well as who has the most, and there's no score pad. It's such a burden to score in that game. And it's like, yeah, I could think of that, and somebody mentioned Bunny Kingdom earlier. Yeah, granted, I mean, I don't need an app for Bunny Kingdom except for the scoring because the scoring's so painful in it. So I thought I excluded those. And I must admit, if I remembered Fantasy Realms, because I played this literally at the last convention in August, actually. Somebody brought it, and after disliking the Stonemaier version, Red Rising, because it has far too many effects in it that require you to AP like crazy and look through decks and stuff, I tried this and I thought, come on, this has got to be better. This sounds better than Red Rising. So much faster, even if it looks like garbage. Sorry, I mean, this artwork and all those things, it is
fair criticism. I mean, Red Rising is gorgeous, but this gameplay on Fantasy Realms is just so good.
Yeah,
oh my gosh.
It's not a looker, but I remember playing the game and it taking about 20 minutes to play the game. and then God knows how long it took to score it. And yes, Scott did call this one earlier. I do remember Scott mentioning Fantasy Realms or something, and it's like when he mentioned it, I thought, oh yeah, that'd be pretty good for scoring, but I was curious to see if it would turn up. Although Emily mentioned that didn't this used to have an app to score? It says it's gone now. So yeah, I think the app for it went.
So yes, there used to be an. Yep, go ahead.
Well, there is a web page because while you were talking, I had a little search and I found what I believe is the web version of this. So you essentially go onto a web browser. It's got all the cards in there, and then you put in the cards and automatically does the score. Okay, something like this is invaluable for this game. I don't want it on a web browser. I want it in an app.
Correct.
It's not that hard. But this one is telling me, right, I've put in a unicorn, basilisk, warhog, and dragon, and the only thing that is scoring is the basilisk until, say, I put in a wizard, and then, for some reason, the dragon's not working. I don't know, but as I say, where's the dragon? Come on, bring him back. No, whatever. Maybe I busted it somehow. Maybe a reset would do. Random stuff.
You got to be careful. They're going to blank certain cards.
Yeah, well, that's fine. But yeah, it's automatically telling me, right, it's crossed out the -40 unless with one wizard because I have a wizard. It's scoring +9 for each beast, so it's doing it. So I know that I have 6 out of 7 cards with 82 points. This is invaluable for this game. Seriously, why is it not an app?
I totally
did the last
agree.
one go?
Yep. I think Emily is spot on here. If it was an app, this should have been reformatted that way. And I think even skipping that section of having to type in everything and just taking the picture, oh my gosh, that would be so good.
Right on there. Because, what was that? Your title triggered me as a video game player. I play board games to get away from the screen. I work and play video games on. Yeah. I mean, we love apps with board games, but we're not saying, oh, I want it to just be a computer game because some apps would be like that. But I just think that there is some fiddliness that we could do without that, and a simple app could work. And publishers could do this. Hire somebody that's good with apps. Get a third-party developer in who does apps, and just say, look, we got a game coming out. We know from playtesting that everything's pretty cool, but playtesters have said that this is just the one bit that's a little bit fiddly. Can you improve it? They make the app. You ship it with the game. You could say, pay them whatever license fee for it or something, and they can just go, right, if you would like to use the app in the rulebook, it's got a link on Google Play or to a website, download the app, and it would just be so much nicer if publishers could just do that now. And I'm hoping that they do, but I'm not aware of many that are kind of doing it yet.
I think Renegade does a really good job of bringing this supplemental app support. And I also think that, what's the company? I'm trying to think now. Awaken Realms. Awaken Realms has done a good job with this. They released a great app for Tainted Grail, turning the storybooks into narration, which I think is really nice. Also, kind of making it so you don't have to go back and forth. There have been some really good steps towards this.
I need to get that app actually, because I've still got the prequel campaign to play in my version. They've got more than just the base game on that app.
They have everything now.
In that case, I need to get that app before I play it next, because that would be good, because man, you have to shift through that book a lot. But I would certainly try that for Tainted, but something like If It Fails could have used something like that, because that needs a lot of streamlining. But yeah, I mean, Awaken Realms have done good. I hear Nemesis has got an improved app now, and for Lockdown, they're doing a decent solo app, so I'm looking forward to that. So Frostpunk might have something like that. I don't know. I don't think that's Awaken Realms. That's somebody else, but spin-off. But, if they can do something like that, that would work. So, yeah, I mean, that company's kind of ahead of the curve for now. They're starting. I want more people to follow.
Now, Luke, what's your favorite style of app? If you had to choose one, what would be your favorite kind of, man, I hope it has this kind of app? What would you say?
Favorite style? Well, I think you can kind of tell it from the top 10 that I've got, is that I like the ones that streamline certain elements of it because they're not intrusive. I'm still doing the game. I'm still got that tactile function, but it takes out, because one thing with it is that time is precious. So anything that can shorten the game length while still giving me the same length of enjoyment is a good thing. And some games I have sold from my collection because little things like the scoring drive me nuts. I could see myself playing Fantasy Realms plenty enough times, but I would refuse to buy the game and go through that scoring every single time I played it. And Bunny Kingdom was mentioned earlier. I sold Bunny Kingdom because I love the drafting, I like the aesthetics, the game is fun, I hate scoring it. It's like, it drives me nuts. But even some of the games I've kept, like Sentinels and Spirit Island, yes, they've got a lot of complexity to it. I've got through it, but it's not that it doesn't bug me on occasion. So the app shouldn't necessarily take over the game, but let's just make something simpler. And I think the scoring ones generally are the best ones of the lot. I can get over the rules,
Gotcha.
I can play it enough times, and that's fine. But for example, Seven Wonders. I think you can get a third party app to score that one. When you score Seven Wonders, normally you got to go through that really long score pad. But when you can basically just say tap tap tap, all right, I've got this many red cards, this much gold, this much green, whatever, and it just automatically works it out. Because once the game is done, I've done my enjoyment of the game,
Mhm.
right? Playing it. The scoring phase is not what I enjoy of the game, right? Unless it's type scoring, it's like, oh, who could possibly win? But to be honest, I don't care who wins. I play to win, but if I lose, whatever, it's only a game.
Yeah.
But yeah, so at that point, I'm kind of like, right, can we get the scoring out of the way, figure out who won so we can move on to game two?
That totally
But
makes sense. Now, for me in particular, the app that I enjoy the most, I don't know if it showed in this list, is narration. Actually, I think narration is my favorite thing. I love in Forgotten Waters where they have actual voice actors. I love that Midara's storybook comes to life with their narration, and I love the Foreteller app and how that's being integrated into things. It just makes it awesome because they can speak and they can talk and set up the story, and then while I'm working on my hand, shuffling some decks, I'm listening. I'm actively participating in the game even during what would be assumed as downtime. It's awesome. It doesn't make me exhausted. And even with like that foreteller system with like the sounds and stuff in the background,
yeah,
oh, it's so good. I love it.
I gotta say a good point here from Steve actually, which is being debated on there. Because Tainted Grail's got the app for, as you mentioned, but it says I like my kids to actually read the book. It's good for them to not be on a tablet and phone. Oh, that is 100% correct. Because I can think of so many kids I know from other friends I know and stuff like that, where I'm just like, man, that kid needs to get out and socialize more because they're just on Fortnite or on the YouTube on the tablet or something. And I mean, I use computers and apps and my phone all the time, but eventually I need to switch off and go to the gym or go to the pub or go hiking on a hill or something. I can't be attached to it forever, despite my job being an accountant, obviously stuck in the PC. But kids these days just do not like go outside enough. They just stay on a screen, and I got to admit, anything that stops them looking at a tablet and phone all the time probably is going to do the kids some good. So, like, can say, right, if they're going to play, let them read the book. Although, are your kids playing Tainted Grail with you? Wow.
Now, speaking as a teacher, this is something that I do all the time. I have students that I'm teaching how to speak English, learning to read. And I find that narration is so helpful when it comes to learning to read. You're associating this language that you're learning to the words that you're reading. You are picking up things as you're moving from sentence to sentence. It is helping you with pronunciation. So I love when games come with narration, but also come with a physical storybook because you're able to do both. You're able to have it both ways. And if you just want to read it, you can. So I love how Tainted Grail has the option of storybook with narration. I love the idea of adding narration to books. It just really helps with that comprehension piece.
So Tainted Grail actually has a narration as well.
Yes, it does, and it works really well. As I think it was Steven saying, he said that the narration is great for solo, or was it Julian up in the comments earlier? Oh, there it is, Steven, yes. So I totally agree. It makes the game quick, and you just type in the entries and kind of follow the prompts, and they read it out loud for you. It does a great job.
So that's this one, is it?
Yes, that's this one. And it's free. It's as long as you have the space on your phone, you can even download the tracks, and that way you have it, and you won't need the Wi-Fi for it. So it's a pretty sweet app. I like it a lot.
And this has no... Wow. Okay, so downloading this.
This is a great tool for getting that game played. It's going to speed up your solo experience. It's a great app. I love it.
It makes me want to get that prequel campaign out soon. If only I could find time, but I got to admit, going through the Descent campaign pretty speedy at the moment so I could do the review for that one. It's kind of like, I'm getting through it, I'm enjoying it, but I do have some issues. And some of it is stuff that the app... It's not to do with the app, though. It's to do with everything that isn't in the app. That's the problem. But every time I'm playing through this campaign, I'm like, this is alright, but I don't really want to get back to Tainted Grail because that's still one of my favorite campaigns, in terms of this is a story, this is characters, this is a world setting I want to get into, whereas Descent is generic fantasy at the end of the day.
That totally makes sense.
That could work, but yeah, oh god, I want the app. I might just get the app and listen to some of the stories now, just see how good the narration is. Because that's the thing. I like narration if it's done well. If narration's done bad, then I don't want to listen to it. But also, that gets expensive. I'm surprised they've done it for the entirety of this app, because that must have cost a bomb to narrate all that lot.
It's interesting because certain companies approach it different ways. Awaken Realms has the capital; they can have somebody do this for them. Where it comes to something like, Cephalofair has the capital too. So does Succubus Publishing, and those are for Gloomhaven and Midara, respectively. And they're going the foreteller route, where it's an additional thing that you purchase. So I think the core box of Gloomhaven was like $10, but you get all 100 scenarios narrated, which is pretty awesome. Because normally when you go through that campaign, the story's not very much, right? Like who cares what's happening? Sure, I'm attacking something, but when you have that cool narration behind it, it actually makes you pay attention a little bit more and be like, oh, this is actually kind of neat.
When you make millions of pounds, you should be putting it in for free. You don't have to pay 10 more bucks to pay on top of your $150 game or something. It's like,
Midara did that actually. Their foreteller app is free, so you can actually just go in and listen to the whole story if you want.
I'm interested in this one. Like, an app should provide open avenues so more people are able to play. In what way?
I think that this makes sense. Maybe if it requires a lot of reading, the narration is going to cut that out, right? Maybe people who have a full grasp of the language can jump into it. So I can see apps breaking down barriers, and I think that's a really positive thing, Julian. I agree with you there.
You'd have to get quite a lot of different ones if you're going to do, like, say, the translation thing. So
yeah.
That would be quite insane. Trying to think of any other. Not many other games have been mentioned, but was there any on my?
Any on your honorable mentions?
Yeah, like very quickly, because we'll need to wrap this up in a sec. Yeah. But was there any on your honorable mentions?
So I kind of meshed most of mine with my number 10 with Arkham Horror. That Gloomhaven Helper. They have this great app that's used to track the monster decks and their health so that you don't have to deal with any of that. So it's way less components to set up. There's also the one for Kingdom Death, which is Black Ledger, which is super, super cool. It has your settlement record sheet on there. You never have to look up different effects or different abilities. You simply just attach them to Survivor. It's so nice. It takes away all of the paperwork. We used this a lot during the lockdown, actually. I had a Kingdom Death campaign that was going on at the time, and it was nice because they could have all of their stuff saved on Black Ledger, and I could have the physical components and stream in off of the camera. So it worked extremely well, and I think it's a great option for that.
No, that works. Yeah, the honorable mentions I had didn't really work as much. I mean, Ether Fields was one I considered, but then I figured I like the game sort of. I think you'd have to overhaul the game to do what Ether Fields could do. I considered Sloth, the heavy deduction game, but then I realized that the app helping you to make certain you don't make a mistake when you do those, because when you play that game, if anybody makes a mistake, you have to kill them because you've just wrecked this hour-and-a-half deduction game. But I look at it and I think, you are not concentrating if you made a mistake with your cards. There's only so much you have to count, so I gave that up. I did consider LCGs in general, Arkham and Lord of the Rings. I just couldn't think of what best to do with them. So, I gave that one up. Ginkgopolis for the scoring, Keyflower for the setup, Imperium for the scoring, but although Imperium, I think, already has an app that does that for the scoring, from what I've heard. Some third-party apps, so... Yeah, the rest on the shortlist were kind of like, this is just a little bit of scoring. And like I say, Camelot was my 10, so I was struggling to think of 10. It would work. I like the fact that people are more saying in the comments about whether like the kids have got enough attention span than like gamers. And to be fair, they probably have. I mean, I'd be surprised if kids playing Tainted Ground, not just because of the attention span, but the setting. It's a dark setting. I mean, that's like saying, oh yeah, my 8-year-old kids love playing this war of mine with me. And it's like, what are you on? that you're getting them to play that kind of game. But I underestimate kids far too much. So
I think Emily has a good comment here. She says she needs some app assistance for Marvel Legendary. Totally agree. That's one of my wife and I's favorite games. So we have this large amount. So it'd be nice for maybe randomization, for even like a keyword lookup. That'd be really nice. So I could see that being a nice, solid app. Good idea, Emily.
Yeah, I have not played my copy in years because it's just so bloated. It's just too much hassle to get it set up. And I got to admit, well, it's just too much. And then you got to settle the villain deck. And then the difficulty curve is all over the shop. And it's like, an app to stream like that actually probably would have been a good one for the list. Although
we have it on the table right now. This is one that we actually played a couple times yesterday. I thought we were going to jump into it a little bit here.
Yeah, but is yours still in a normal box?
Nope. We use BCW boxes mostly for big card games like LCGs and Legendary. They're basically these white big cardboard boxes. They're ugly, but man, they work so well. And it's just columns after columns. I think they call it a
Yeah,
card
but
motel.
you don't have that to
Yep.
shift off the shelf.
I
That's
don't
got
think it's worth it.
I
it's
don't I don't think it's worth it anymore either. It's got my Marvel stuff in it, it's got the Alien one in it, the Predator one in it,
Oh my
and the
gosh.
Firefly in it. So it's got all four of the Legendary
Yeah.
games I own. But man, do I hate getting that off the shelf and taking it apart and going all those. And although I do it now and again for the Alien and the Predator one, because I still love the Alien one. The Alien one was on my top 100, and it's like, yeah, I still get it out occasionally for the Alien one because I've only got to find one tray. But the Marvel takes up about 2 or 3 trays in that thing because there's so much of it. And I think I got to a point with expansions, probably the Hulk one.
Oh, I love that one.
World War Hulk. That might have been the last one I bought. And then I thought, yeah, you know what? I'm kind of done because I'm not playing this game as much as I love Marvel. I'm playing Sentinels more, and it's just like, yeah, this is way too bloated. And now the expansions are just going into bits of the lore that I don't know anything about. Bear in mind, I've not watched the read comics and stuff. It's just like, who on earth are these? Whatever.
Some of these newer ones have been really neat. They've been revisiting the old expansions. Like they had one recently with the new Thor stuff. They revisited Throne artifacts. They had this new Guardians of the Galaxy like part 2 where they started using the shard mechanic again with like burning shards and using them for interesting ways. It's really neat. I really like the evolutions. And whenever a new expansion comes out, this is one that we sleeve up, get played, and just try everything and have a good time with. So I'm really enjoying Marvel Legendary still.
I want an app to do this villain setup, though. That villain deck is the painful bit that puts me off the game. It's like, I'll happily build my own deck, but then the hero deck takes ages to set up. You gotta get your heroes and then shuffle that thing like there's no tomorrow.
It's the like, price we pay for customization, right? Like, yes, it's going to be a big setup. It's like the awkward guest game, right? Gosh, if only we had a way to simplify that setup,
You know. But then, like, that's one thing I great with the Sentinels one, because yes, there's a ton in it, and I got to get that box off the shelf and stick it on the table. But you pull out the trays and that. But then all I've got to do is go, right, I'm playing the solo, so I want those 3 heroes, this environment, this villain. Get the decks out, go through their individual setups and that. But you'd be surprised how little time that takes compared to setting up the villain deck and the hero deck in there or something, because they're pre-built.
Yep, you're totally spot on. Your deck is this. Boom, you're ready to go. Makes sense.
And what's so there? Lastly, before we sign up, maybe an unpopular opinion, but I'd like an app if it made the game have a smaller footprint. Well, I suppose the only thing is, if you make it have a smaller footprint, that means you're taking away the board, which is kind of like half the great thing about a board game is having the actual board. You know, the Spectre Ops one I mentioned earlier, I don't want the board gone and everything just to be on the tablet. No, I want the hunters to have that board in the coordination where their miniatures are. I just want me as the agent to have the tablet and have there. So at least the rest of the tactile stuff is still there. It's just streamlining a certain aspect of it. Mysterium still has the cards. It's just taking that DM screen and a few of the other fiddly bits. So, you know, even Descent, yeah, the app does a lot of the combat and the bookkeeping side of it. It's a great app, but you still have the 3D terrain and everything out in front of you, as much as some of my flaws of the game are actually to do with the 3D terrain. We'll find more about that when I get to the actual detailed review of that one. But yeah, so there's positive and negatives, I guess, how it works. But should be pretty good. Right. I think that's good for there. Yeah, we're getting on to nearly 2 hours. It's a long one. People have got to obviously enjoy whatever their sunny afternoon is in America at the moment, because I keep forgetting it's afternoon for you lot over there. So
yep, 3:00 here in Colorado.
You still got the whole day. I've got a couple of hours of timestamps, and I might go on my PC or I might unbox a bunch of games. I've still got some purchases down there I need to unbox.
Fun.
Well, I've already watched everything I need to watch on Disney Plus at the moment, so I'm kind of up to date. Speaking of which, watch Star Wars Visions.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that first episode. Oh, there's like majority of those episodes are great. Loved it.
There's only one I'm not a fan of, and even then it's like, it's passable, but the rest of it, I really like that one. Anyway, that's it from us. We're going to sign off the stream. So thank you, like 20 odd people that joined. You know, obviously I picked a bad time to do this in terms of timing, but that's all right. People will watch this after the fact, so I hope you enjoy it as well. Let us know in the comments what games you want assisted with apps and give us the reasons, because I struggled to find 10. Max come up with some great examples there, whether I've heard of the game or not, and I would love to hear some other interesting ideas. Not to mention, also, if you know of a third-party app that exists, put it in the comments so I can see it, because I've already learned about a Tainted Grail app. I've learned about a Spectre Ops app. There was at least a couple others in there that I wanted to, the Fantasy Realms one and stuff. And it's like, yeah, I need to keep tabs on these because I want these apps. So, yep. Anyway, thanks for getting on. Remember, sign up to Sidegame's YouTube channel if you can, because obviously how can I forget my own hashtag? Yes, hashtag support small creators. Am I sharing the right screen? Nope. Give me a sec. Yeah, I know.
But thanks again, Luke, for having me on. I do really appreciate it. This was a fun list. And yeah, thanks for making time for me in your busy schedule.
I want to get these collaborations on and going. Yes, I know I'm trying to do a top 100. It's an absolute nightmare, but it's like I say, I got to keep these ones going because it was like half the reason for doing support small creators is having this collaboration thing work. And there's people that have been on Nerd Shelves and all that obviously want to come back on, and there's new people that did. In fact, you mentioned chairman of the board, right?
Yeah, he's a great content creator. We have a regular show that we do together on our channel called Corporate Cardboard, and he's got some great opinions, great reviews, and a very nice lens at how he looks at videos. So if you're interested in a content creator, he's a great one.
You said his name was Dan, right?
Yes, Dan.
He's actually messaged me on Instagram about doing this. So yeah. A chairman on the board.
Chairman on the board. Check him out. He's fantastic.
Is on the mission. Yeah, that's definitely on the lineup at some point.
Awesome. Great.
That will happen. Anyway, thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you later. Love you all. Remember,
Adios.
it's only a game. Bye-bye.